Ya, selamat, sore waktu Indonesia, selamat pagi waktu Edinburgh, Mbak. Mungkin saya pertama mau meluruskan di awal ya, bahwa banyak sekali berita-berita saya banyak dapat, japri ya di WhatsApp, bahkan dari teman-teman atau, kerabat di keluarga tentang kondisi di Inggris. Sebenarnya dalam proses, krisis ini sendiri, ini masih wajar ya kalau menurut saya, karena dikarenakan, kenaikan harga-harga memang ada, tapi pangan juga masih terjangkau dan kami bisa mencoba mencari alternatif-alternatif yang ada. Karena saya mengumpulkan ini dikarenakan, kami juga sebagai mahasiswa, PhD ya, yang berangkat dengan beasiswa, kami juga merasa, cukup prihatin dengan kondisi yang ada di dalam negeri yang juga menghadapi krisis. Jadi we all on this together. Jadi kita semua bersama ya, Mbak, baik di Indonesia maupun di Inggris.
Mmm,
Ini sekedar meluruskan beberapa berita yang kesannya Inggris itu, sangat ekstrim ya,
mhm.
tentang soal kekurangan pangannya.
Tapi kenaikan harga memang cukup signifikan ya dialami karena imbas inflasi 9,9% ini ya, Mbak Win ya?
Kalau pangan ya, saya merasa kalau di Inggris itu soal kebutuhan pangan itu banyak alternatif dari sisi harga. Jadi kalau memang, banyak alternatif bahwa dalam artian kita bisa cari toko yang menjual lebih murah. Tapi tentu saja yang paling berimbas besar untuk mahasiswa, adalah gitu, terutama mahasiswa dengan keluarga, adalah sewa rumah dan pembayaran heater dan listrik, Mbak.
Oke.
Karena itu bisa bisa untuk di beberapa kota itu menghabiskan 70 sampai 80% beasiswa.
Oke, baik, Bu Win. I'm moving on to Ken. Ken, referring to data from market research, Nielsen's IQ reported by Reuters about 57% of UK consumers have been or are being impacted by the cost of living crisis so far. Within 3 months ahead, the figure is expected to rise to 76%. Is the assistance from the UK government already effective to conquer this tension?
Well, I think we have to separate a couple of things. One is the government's intention to cap the increase in utility prices. That will have a material impact on the household sector. It's not a positive in itself; it just mitigates the impact of higher energy prices. So that is a significant impact. It's estimated by the government in the region of 60 billion sterling. It could end up actually being much more costly than that. That is a very large sum. At least a couple of percentage points of GDP, maybe bigger. However, at the same time, of course, because of the announcements of fiscal stimulus unfunded, funded by increased debt issuance, we've had a very pronounced tightening of financial conditions in the UK with a big increase in short and long-term interest rates, which will, of course, over time pass through into higher mortgage costs for households. So we have, on the one hand, the government providing some support, but on the other hand, a tightening of financial conditions, which the Bank of England has already signalled has a long way further to go to keep inflation in check. And that obviously is going to have a negative impact at the same time. So the environment for the consumer in the UK, same as pretty much everywhere globally, still looks very challenging indeed.
Okay, to face these conditions, the UK government's cut taxes and causes liquidity to become loose. This policy is contrary to the BOA, which is tightening liquidity. Do you see the UK government's fiscal policy at odds with the central banks?
Well, in essence, it is because the Bank of England is signalling very clearly that it has to lean down on demand in the economy to try and keep inflation and inflation expectations in check. And at the same time, of course, the government has, in addition to announcing the cap on energy prices, introduced a series of income tax reductions and has reversed some of the increases that were planned, both for national insurance and also for corporate taxes. So there's a fiscal stimulus when there are supply constraints in the economy, at the same time as monetary policy is being tightened, which is highly unusual. And so the timing of the government's announcement has been particularly poor, and it puts increasing pressure on the Bank of England to signal its determination to keep inflation down. So markets are currently discounting at least 100 basis point increase in Bank of England rates at its next meeting in early November. And I think it's very likely that the Bank of England will deliver.
Okay. On the other hand, when taxes are cut, the UK government does not reduce spending and has the potential to burden the debt to GDP ratio. How do you view the UK government's fiscal health?
Well, I think this is the essence of the problem. This is the reason why we've had such an adverse reaction in the UK government bond market, such an adverse reaction from sterling. So that the principle of reducing taxes to support economic growth, particularly to raise trend growth, I can see the argument for that,
Mhm.
but obviously how it's financed is hugely important. And in this case, the government was very keen, having just taken office with a new prime minister, new chancellor, to give a very clear signal of its intent. But at the same time, it didn't provide any commitment at all to medium-term fiscal consolidation. So those unfunded tax changes, of course, raised a concern about huge increase in gilt issuance, and also raised concerns about the long-run trajectory of the debt to GDP ratio. And the concern, of course, has been compounded by the fact that the government didn't allow the Office for Budget Responsibility to provide its assessment of the UK public finance outlook. And that, of course, has also damaged the UK government's position. So the pressure is now on to change direction, but so early in this new government's policy stance, it's quite difficult, of course, credibility-wise, to do a U-turn. And so that's why the pressure increasingly is on the Bank of England to step in. It's already done that with its gilt purchases, and I think the pressure will continue on the pound, and therefore put pressure on the Bank of England to again, speed up the pace of monetary policy tightening to try and deal with the credibility deficit from the government's announcements.
Okay, Ken. Next question. I will to moving on to Bu Win. Bu Win, tadi kan udah di-statementkan banyak sekali ya oleh Ken, dan banyak ternyata juga dari sisi ekonomi banyak kebijakan dari Inggris sekali sudah diambil begitu ya, dan cukup balancing dari beberapa posisi baik fiskal, monetary. Sebenarnya kalau dirasakan sendiri dari pemerintah Inggris sendiri cukup nggak sih kebijakannya membantu raise up daya beli masyarakat gitu di sana, Bu Win?
Saya terus terang, saya kemarin dapat email Mbak dari perusahaan listrik ya, dan mereka memberikan uang cash langsung ke rekening listrik masing-masing nilai 400 sampai 500 pound. Nah itu cukup membantu ya, itu cukup membantu hingga 6 bulan ke depan saya pikir. Karena kenaikan tagihan listrik itu sampai 250% bila dibandingkan dari Januari 2022. Dan nanti di bulan Oktober akan diperkirakan lagi listrik akan naik karena penggunaan demand karena musim dingin ya, karena winter itu pasti akan naik. Nah, masalahnya adalah pemerintah Inggris itu membedakan antara tentu saja membedakan antara citizenship dengan Inggris citizenship dengan UK citizenship atau non UK citizenship, dan ini berpengaruh pada berapa bantuan yang akan diambil. Untuk mahasiswi internasional seperti kami, memang ada rencana support bantuan dari universitas, tetapi tentu saja dengan syarat-syarat ketat yang terkadang sulit gitu untuk dipenuhi oleh mahasiswa internasional, dan ini pun yang sudah menyebabkan teman-teman menginisiasi bersurat dan beremail ke Vice Chancellor masing-masing untuk juga mereka concern dengan apa yang dengan biaya hidup yang juga dihadapi oleh mahasiswa internasional.
Sudah ada respon, Bu Win?
Sudah ada respon, tapi yang kami kritik adalah bagaimana tiap universitas memiliki kebijakan masing-masing untuk menerima aplikasi bantuan untuk tiap mahasiswa atau mahasiswi. Jadi tidak terlalu bisa terakses untuk beberapa orang, Mbak.